Germany. Process to recognize Palestine state must begin now. Even they got Germany speaking out.
Germany says the process to recognize a Palestinian state must begin now. Berlin adding that Israel is increasingly in the minority over the issue of Palestine. The move comes just hours after Canada said it planned on recognizing the state of Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September. For more, we can go across to Nick Holsworth standing by in Berlin. Nick, good afternoon. Just how significant is what's coming out of Germany today?
Germany is the last bastion of Israel defense. So it is fairly significant when it's like America number 1, Germany number 2, Israel number 3 in terms of defending Israel. So when you got even Germany being like, oh, we are going to move to this state recognition. Yeah, that's fairly significant. I will say, that is not an insignificant move. That's shocking. Even though, let's be real, and I've talked about this already, all of these statehood recognitions are coming with a ton of qualifiers, and they're actually not moving the needle as hard as it's supposed to, and it's pretty messed up overall. But it implies that the environment has changed quite a bit. On the one hand, I'm wary because it is a PR stunt. I don't trust Western nations at all. But on the other hand, I do think that the permission structure has shifted so dramatically that these guys are engaging in this to appease the masses, to appease the discontent that they are experiencing, and they have to respond. America doesn't, because America's not a democracy, and America has a you gonna do about it kind of attitude, right? Whereas like European liberal democracies at least symbolically have to defend democracy and liberal values. So I think that they're just trying to find an outlet where they could just be like, yeah, we are also responding to the increasing public pressure that is mounted against us. A lot of the state recognition qualifiers are demilitarized Palestinian state, run by the Palestinian Authority, which is incredibly unpopular in the eyes of the Palestinians. It's not a real democratic process at all. The Palestinian Authority is a de facto arm of the Israeli security apparatus. It is the second least popular entity in the region in the eyes of the Palestinians, after Israel, of course. And also the idea that they're supposed to be demilitarized makes the process of full-blown ethnic cleansing imminent. It basically says no longer can Israel do full-blown ethnic cleansing right now in the Gaza Strip, but they can continue doing the same process that they've taken place through a sequence of checkpoints, annexation, land grabs, pogroms that they've engaged in the West Bank. That's basically what they're saying, which is Israel's goal, ultimately. I mean, how can anyone avoid or deny the reality that Israel's goal is the greater Israeli project at this point? You can't. You can't deny it. It's undeniable. That's precisely the reason why they're even making this inference, making this state recognition known, right? Why? Because Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign has gotten so unimaginably horrible that it has created this massive amount of public pressure that politicians have to respond to at this point. It's become unavoidable. Like I said, you have to become undeniable. You have to become unavoidable. If you want to let your voice be heard, if you want change to happen in the Western world, you just have to keep up the pressure. And all of a sudden, all that pressure amounts to state recognition with like these conditions. It's not enough. You have to keep pushing.
Let's go across to Jerusalem now. France 24's Noga Donopolsky is standing by. Noga, this is a bombshell shift in tone from Germany, and it follows similar statements from other G7 states. Has there been any reaction?
There's been vicious reaction from Israel. The first country to make this announcement was France, and Israel responded via the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister by accusing President Macron of being a collaborator with Hamas terror, no less, of rewarding murderous Hamas terror by recognizing a Palestinian state. And clearly this is part of a well-coordinated diplomatic tsunami plan to pressure Israel.
Everyone is Hamas. I mean, of course, Israel is Hamas. Who isn't Hamas at this point? You know, Germany is Hamas. Germany saying this is so funny. What are Benjamin Netanyahu's going to come out and be like, this is the most anti-Semitic thing that Germany has ever done in its long history. Nothing is more anti-Semitic than the recognition of a Palestinian state. Nothing. I repeat, this is far outdoing the Holocaust in magnitude. Conditional state recognition is worse than the Holocaust, is what we will hear. Oh my God. "80 years after the Holocaust, and Germany is returning to support Nazism." I mean, it's not as bad. This is not as bad as I was joking about. What I'm joking about is like someone saying this is worse than the Holocaust, okay? He's not saying that. He's saying this is the equivalent of the Holocaust. Oh, Jesus Christ.
But as our colleague Nick just said, the German minister is doing so on his way to Israel. He's about to arrive in Jerusalem. And we also have Sweden. The prime minister in Sweden called for suspending the European free trade agreement with Israel. So these are all extremely serious matters. They indicate the complete collapse of Israeli foreign policy that we have seen under Prime Minister Netanyahu during this war. I mention his name in particular because Netanyahu has long presented himself to Israelis as, and I'm quoting now from his many political campaigns, as in another league, in a more elevated diplomatic league, as the one specialist who really...
Bro, it turns out, even by European standards, after centuries of death, destruction, extraction of natural resources from the global south, slavery, even with all the bounties of colonial empire, even the Europeans have like a distaste for maximum death and destruction, like doing a 13th century style siege on a captive population that has iPhones and can literally elevate the problem directly to the doorstep of every single person in the Western world is untenable. Who would have thought? It turns out, regardless of the multi-billion-dollar influence peddling operation and advocacy groups that you have cultivated over a long period of time, over multiple decades, in an effort to align so perfectly with Western foreign policy in this resource-rich region, there is only so much death and destruction that even the most racist, Islamophobic people will allow. We are there. We are there. There is no starvation of children that is appropriate in the eyes of the Western world, so much so that even liberal politicians in America have to respond to this and be like, okay, I don't know how we got here, but oops, we can't do this any longer. I thought, and I say this as someone who constantly talks about how depraved we are here in the West, right? In the comfort of our homes. But I thought even this would have been packed up a long time ago. I thought that there was only so much death and destruction that people would be on board with. I literally thought, the entirety of the hospital system collapsing in the Gaza Strip was enough. I thought it should have been enough. This should have ended a year ago. This should have been ended a year ago with prosecutions coming in instantly. It is crazy that there is still people holding out hope that, you can complete the ethnic cleansing. You can complete the ethnic cleansing campaign.
And Noga, I'm just curious, what are ordinary Israelis saying about this shift in tone that's coming from right around the world? Do they feel alone now?
I think Israel...
Do they feel alone now? I mean, dude, I don't think Israeli society broadly thinks about these sorts of things any longer. I think they've just they have found a perfect thought terminating cycle here where they just go, oh, it's anti-Semitism. It's such a powerful motivator because anti-Semitism has been a blight for thousands of years, and anti-Semitism still certainly exists. So because of that reason, I think it's even more powerful than when white Christians in America talk about white Christian persecution, because there is a validity to the marginalization. That is the reason why I think it is virtually impossible to get people in Israel to understand why they are being considered as a pariah state. Having said that, however, just as though white Afrikaners started slowly but surely coming to that recognition that they had become a pariah due to their apartheid, I think a lot of Israelis will eventually say, hey, we got to stop this. Like, this is crazy. And if they don't, it's done. Even if they do, it's done. Zionism as a project is, in my opinion, over.
I do think that it's important to remember that a two-state solution until fairly recently was the official position of the Israeli state. The state of Israel said, we want to live side by side with an eventual state of Palestine. It is Prime Minister Netanyahu who in a fairly recent statement a few years ago said, over my dead body, will there be a state of Palestine? He turned this issue into a taboo when it is almost by definition an Israeli interest to be able to live side by side in peace with Palestinians. And now this taboo that he created is being used against him and is being used against Israel by allied leaders who were searching for some way, any way they could pressure him, now that the Trump administration appears to have decided to give him almost blanket support.
Well, we'll see if that does shift once those discussions with Steve Witkoff start. Thank you very much for that, Noga Tanopolsky, reporting there for us from Jerusalem.
What's going to happen when it goes back to the exact same method? Look, listen, the more discourse shifts against Israel as politicians and the media play catch up to where the public attitude has been for quite a while, right? Because that's what the media is doing. That's what the politicians are doing. They're playing catch up. The more its defenders, Israel's defenders, will cynically try to attack its critics. They cannot contend with the walls closing in. It's in its death throes. Zionism as a project is in its death throes. Israel is a pariah state that even politicians are being forced to recognize as a pariah state now. And while they take their sweet ass time with like these incredibly convoluted and restrictive conditional recognitions, that will open up a permission structure for people like ourselves to continue our advocacy. I never thought that I would see the day where, I mean, you know, this kind of commentary is silly, but like the Pod Johns sound like me a year ago, you know? Like you got Pod Save America, you got Obama's speech writing team and its podcasting circle that is fairly influential. They are now talking like I was speaking a year ago. That, I think, is a signal of the attitude shift. That's why we say one day everyone will have always been against this. It still feels like people are trying to qualify their statements by being like, Israel was right to respond to October 7th the way they did, but now they've gone too far. Yeah, that's fucking bullshit. Okay, that's bullshit. The idea of like claiming, you know, Israel has a right to defend itself or but Hamas, like these kinds of qualifiers are ridiculous. Okay. No one has a right to do a genocide. It's that simple, which is why so many people refuse to say it. So many people still refuse to say Israel's an apartheid. So many people refuse to say Israel's doing a genocide. The reason why they can't say it, Bernie Sanders, okay, is because Israel does not have a right to a genocide. No one has a right to do a genocide. There's no justification for it. So because Israel is currently doing a genocide, and many people are recognizing it as such, people that are still holding on to this notion of Israel just like kind of getting ahead of itself and only accidentally, oopsie, doing this ethnic cleansing campaign are speaking to a reality that doesn't exist. Yeah, I actually liked her response to this as well. Anna Horford, the sister of Boston Celtics power forward Al Horford, goes on a nasty rant against Danny Avdija for supporting his home country, Israel. And then it's an Israeli flag and then a shy emoji. Danny is a hero. If you don't know him, he is up-and-coming Israeli all-star player who plays for the Portland Trail Blazers. Everyone show him support. This was the tweet. Danny Avdija says he's willing to educate people in the U.S. Not everyone understands 100% what is happening in Israel. We're a very small country. We are a small country. And there are people who live in bubbles in their countries. Many are interested. And I always explain the whole situation. Anna Horford says, this is like a Nazi trying to justify the Holocaust. You can't both sides what Israel's doing. Israeli denial and lack of accountability will be studied for decades to come. The NBA is made worse by his presence. Yeah, I don't know this dude's background, but she responded and I really liked it. She said, heroes don't support genocide and apartheid. Outdated Zionist propaganda doesn't work anymore. The world sees you for who you are. Respect. It's a tiny nation. Israel, tiny nation. Why you come after Israel? It's tiny nation. His dad played for Yugoslavia? A shame. No way. Really? God damn. Tito would be disgusted. Trump warns Jewish donor. MAGA is starting to hate Israel. Not enough. Not hard enough. There is a technical reason and a really cynical, really fucked up reason, for the record, why many politicians, including maybe Bernard Sanders, who refuse to call it a genocide, because a genocide is illegal, and aiding and abetting a nation that is conducting a genocide is also illegal. And unless you're AOC and you somehow say Israel's doing a genocide, but we also have to defend it, most politicians don't want to say the first part, because the second part looks stupid when you say the first part. AOC literally says a genocide, but then turns around and is like, but we still have to give defensive weapons to the country doing genocide. Okay, well, you're out of your mind then. Okay, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Ridiculous. Like I've said, dude, I think there are many things that Israel did wrong in this process. There are many things that Israel did really wrong in this process, okay? But one of the things that I identified early on was the comfort that Israeli envoys experienced for many, many decades, as they were able to freely contextualize why all of this bloodshed was totally appropriate. And if you actually criticized it, you were anti-Semitic, and that would just shut off all kinds of responses instantly, right? Now that no longer exists, they thought they could still get away with that bullshit. And because of that, when they couldn't get away with it, they got incredibly arrogant. I'm sorry, but if you're that arrogant, obviously Americans who don't give a shit are going to turn around and go, oh, I don't know about this. What do you mean? You've gotten billions of dollars in weapons, big dog. What is happening here? Let's dial it back a little bit. Rogan has gone full woke. And
then they're kicking students out that write articles they don't like.
Yeah, that's nuts.
I mean, I talked about this before when he first covered this.
Isn't a university supposed to be a place where someone's allowed to express themselves and have
non-violently?
Yeah.
This is the average American's perspective, though. Even the average American who doesn't necessarily give a shit about like what Israel is doing all that much, sees like the death and destruction, thinks, this is not great. But then more consequentially, more significantly, Americans hate censorship and cancel culture. And then all of a sudden, the position of defending Israel revolves around an endless amount of cancel culture and an endless amount of violations of the First Amendment, like actual real violations of the First Amendment, not simply saying, oh, you made me feel bad and now I'm going to yell at you, but actually prosecution from the government. Americans see that and they go, okay, well, this is extra ridiculous.
So they're writing something down and they're not calling for violence either. And they're getting challenged. And that's supposed to be how it happens. You get challenged, smarter people have better arguments, or your argument stands.
Right, discourse.
Yes.
It's supposed to be a place for discourse.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you're deporting people because you don't like who they're criticizing? Like, that gets kind of shifty.
Yeah. Podcasters, especially, are not beholden to the administration to the same degree as like a Charlie Kirk is. And for that reason, they will basically pull out. They're like rats. They will pull out when they see things that they think are unconscionable. The free world has a moral responsibility to Palestinians in distress. Flood Gaza with food, says Richie Torres. Wow. He got woke, dude. They cheer for genocide and Star Wars people, but once the damage is done and the impact is irreversible, they divorce themselves from the depravity and act like they had the moral position all along. That's crazy to me because I feel like Richie Torres was... I'm blocked by him, by the way. I feel like he's been the #1 attack dog for Israel in Congress. What's going on, dude? What an attitude shift here. What a attitude. What changed, Richie? Bitchy Torres? Oh, you got scared you're going to get primaried? Is that what happened? And you still, I hope you do. This is part of the reason why I said it's not just about AIPAC dollars. It's not just about the money that these politicians get from AIPAC or other Israel advocacy groups. Do you understand? It's also, more importantly, a direct consequence of America's foreign policy needs and how much they can support that without increasing public scrutiny. That's why public pressure matters. Because when it becomes unavoidable, public pressure becomes unavoidable on this issue, and you are known for being the champion of this issue, the champion of starving children in Gaza, all of a sudden, you're out there alone, and no amount of AIPAC dollars will save you. Right now, if you're coming out and being like, oh no, how could this have happened? Oh no, all this shit. If you're saying that right now, that's not enough. You have to literally go out on a limb and be a radical politician. You have to go out on a limb and say, this is a genocide, this is unacceptable, to make up for lost time. You have to start outflanking centrist Democrats. You're right, though, on the legality of labeling it a genocide, but then sending aid, it would stop them. Exactly. That's why. And not just not just offensive weapons. It would be illegal. It should be illegal. It is illegal to send Israel any aid right now under our pre-existing laws. This is why we kept repeating the Leahy law over and over again when Biden was the fucking president. Where do I direct my anger? Like, they bombed every building, every hospital, every single refugee camp. Death did nothing. Why is food the issue? I have repeated this over and over again. Denial of aid is irredeemable in the eyes of legal authorities. It is the most overt version of ethnic cleansing. Under legal circumstances, you can actually engage in this horrifying calculation of collateral damage. This person was a priority target. Maybe he wasn't supposed to be a priority target, but we assessed it and we thought he was a priority target and we killed 50, 60 people alongside him. There is a level of plausible deniability. There is no level of plausible deniability for refusal to render aid to a civilian population that you are bombing. If they simply killed everyone in Gaza by bombing them while simultaneously allowing aid to go in to the Gaza Strip, there would be less anger. I'm telling you right now, there is no defense for refusing to allow aid into an area that you're bombing. There's no legal defense for not having any safe zones, for example, like areas that you do not bomb. You can't defend that. It is indefensible. You will never find an NGO or any sort of legal institution that will try to defend it. That's why Israel denies that it's happening. It is the red line. And of course, the images of the depraved starvation campaign of Israel is obviously going to make people very angry. I just don't get it. Why don't Dems oppose genocide completely, at least for political gain? Why do they intentionally hurt themselves? Because they're old and because they're echo chambered, because they're cynical, because they understand that this is American foreign policy and it will not move an inch until it is impossible not to. I mean, dude, they threw the election away because of their refusal to acknowledge that Israel was committed to this genocidal campaign. It's because it's a formative part of American foreign policy in the region. That's it.
After recent pictures seem to support evidence of mass starvation, Canada now says it plans to recognize Palestinian statehood. The UK and France have made similar announcements, which could affect a future peace process. Canada's Mideast policy is now at odds with President Trump, who said their announcement could impact the chances of reaching a trade deal with the U.S. Human rights groups are using strong new language about what's happening in Gaza. Deborah Patta has the latest and a warning. The images are disturbing.
The war in Gaza has reached a tipping point as images of starving children have shaken the world. But a growing number of organizations, including the UN and on Monday 2 Israeli human rights groups, are not just accusing Israel of deliberate starvation, but of a far graver crime.
Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
It's a charge Israel
I'm frustrated because on the one hand, it is still exceptionalism. It is still supremacist to only say, oh, finally it's here now that like Israeli NGOs are also recognizing it. But also on the other hand, from the optics game, I do think that it becomes even more indefensible for many hanger-ons and many people in the margins that just simply refuse to recognize the reality up until this point. So I'll take it. It's the same principle that I have because like on the one hand, I have to be pragmatic. Okay. I have to be pragmatic. We all have to be pragmatic and we all have to recognize that this is a step in the right direction. It's a good thing that like the Israeli NGOs are also admitting this reality, even though it's 22 months in. It will create more pressure. Having said that, make no mistake, it absolutely is Jewish supremacist and exceptionalist to overall refuse to recognize these atrocities when the Palestinians say it. When the Palestinians talk about their own conditions, everybody turns a blind eye. When people like myself try to highlight the plight of the Palestinians by directly showing you exactly what the Palestinians are saying, they say, you're crazy, shut the fuck up. They try to deplatform people like ourselves. Only until it's an Israeli official or only until it's an Israeli NGO that openly recognize it 22 months in, do people go, okay, I guess it's happening. Terrorists, until what? B'Tselem says so? Okay. But you didn't give a shit when B'Tselem recognized the apartheid.
Vehemently denies.
It is baseless. There is no intent. Key for the charge of genocide.
But in a new report published by a respected medical journal, The Lancet, a group of health professionals said it was time to break the silence on genocide. Their findings, made since October 7, 2023, are damning. Life expectancy has reportedly fallen by 35 years. Gaza has the highest number of child deaths of any conflict zone, and
by the way, the very fact that many smart people still refuse to call it a genocide, even though it clearly is one, is because of the additional complications that come along with that designation, that legal designation. And that's precisely why you should keep pushing people to say it, including Bernie Sanders. The moment that people recognize the reality that it is a genocide, okay, is the moment where all cards are off the table. You can't deny, you can't give aid to Israel, you can't defend Israel. There's no more defending genocide. You're a genocide defender at that point. And up until that moment of recognition, you were a genocide denier. That is precisely the reason why still so many liberal Zionists, from Bernie Sanders to the J Street guy that Mehdi Hasan debated, they just refuse to recognize it. They just refuse to say it's a genocide. But just like they refuse to recognize the war crimes or the ethnic displacement or the plight of the Palestinians up until 22 months in, they will inevitably recognize that as well. So I don't understand how these guys don't even think about their own personal futures, where they just kind of throw that out. They just don't realize how this looks. You look like a fool right now when you say, oh, I've come to the conclusion that everyone has been on for the past year and a half. Okay, great. But now you're still trying to be a setback. Now you are still trying to present yourself as a hurdle for further initiatives to be taken to stop this bloodshed.
Report concludes starvation has been relentlessly used as a weapon of war. For CBS Mornings, I'm Deborah Patter in East Jerusalem.
The level of human suffering in Gaza is intolerable.
In another major blow to Israel, Canada announcing it'll recognize a Palestinian state, citing the crisis on the ground.
By the way, the other part of the reason why people can't say genocide is because if you say it's genocide, then what Ansar Allah is doing is valid and just. The Houthis in Yemen. What Hezbollah is doing is valid and just in Lebanon. They're not doing anything anymore because they're done. But all of a sudden, because it is, by the way, it is literally. And all of a sudden, what we did to stop the Houthis from trying to stop Israel's genocide, all of a sudden we're the bad guys. You understand? We are too closely associated as a belligerent in this conflict. That's the problem.